Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to plunge into some really fascinating topics and pull out the most compelling insights we can find for you.
That's the plan.
And today, we're starting with a pretty mysterious, quite intriguing image, actually. Imagine a night blooming flower. Beautiful, right? But it's described as having this profound, almost visceral effect on the human body. We're talking about Cactus grandiflorus, or as most people know it, the night blooming cereus.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, our whole mission really is to dig into one specific, and I have to say, utterly fascinating text, William Boericke's Homeopathic Materia Medica.
Right.
Now, for anyone not familiar, you should know this isn't like a modern medical textbook. It's a unique collection of very detailed, sometimes quite idiosyncratic clinical observations.
Okay.
It focuses on how different substances were believed in the homeopathic tradition to affect the body. So we're going to focus specifically on how this plant, Cactus grandiflorus, is described.
And find those surprising kind of nuggets of knowledge about its effects.
Exactly. What did Boericke observe? What stood out?
So what's the main thread here, the core concept we're going to keep circling back to in this deep dive?
Well, the central, absolutely most characteristic sensation that Boericke attributes to Cactus grandiflorus is this powerful feeling of constriction.
Constriction.
Yeah, and he describes it very specifically, almost poetically, as being as of an iron band.
An iron band, wow.
That's the key phrase. And you're going to hear how this single, really vivid sensation, it's not just a minor thing, it permeates various aspects of the body, the mind even.
Right.
It creates this unique, quite memorable clinical picture, at least from this particular medical perspective.
Okay, let's unpack that then. This signature sensation, the iron band. How did Boericke describe it sort of unleashing itself across the body?
Well, the source, Boericke's text, explains that Cactus grandiflorus is thought to act primarily on circular muscular fibers.
Okay, so the muscles that kind of squeeze things shut, like around organs.
Exactly, those. And that action is what directly causes these feelings of constriction.
And it hits the heart and arteries first, right? That's what he says. The heart and arteries, especially, that at once respond. And that's what produces those very characteristic constrictions as of an iron band.
So it's immediate and right at the core, the cardiovascular system.
It's striking how central the heart is in his description. It makes that feeling almost foundational to the whole picture of this remedy.
But this iron band feeling, it's not just the heart, is it?
No, not at all. That's what's interesting. It's a recurring theme. It pops up, as he puts it, in various places.
Like where else?
Like the esophagus, your food pipe,
Oh, okay.
and even the bladder. It seems like this crushing, gripping feeling can show up wherever you have those circular muscles.
That sounds intense.
It does. He describes this dramatic general sensation where the whole body feels as if caged, each wire being twisted tighter.
Wow. Like you're trapped inside yourself and it's getting tighter.
Precisely. And beyond that specific feeling, other big themes Boericke connects to this are hemorrhage bleeding.
Those constant constrictions, a really strong sense of periodicity symptoms coming back at specific times, and spasmodic pains, sharp, sudden contractions.
Okay, so constriction, bleeding, patterns, spasms. And he also mentions its influence on arteries.
Yes, on atheromatous arteries and weak heart.
Cool.
So arteries that are hardened, narrowed, and a heart that's struggling.
Which leads to?
Well, according to the text, that leads to congestions and an irregular distribution of blood. And here's a really curious, almost alarming detail he notes. It's said to favor formation of clots speedily.
Clots forming quickly. That sounds serious.
It does. And Boericke paints a pretty stark picture of what severe cases might look like, stating that someone profoundly affected could be pulseless, panting, and prostrated.
Just completely debilitating.
A truly debilitating state, yeah.
Now, you mentioned the mind earlier. How does that connect?
Ah, yes, this is fascinating. Boericke observed that the mental symptoms produced correspond to those found when there are heart affections.
So he's drawing a direct line between the physical heart issues and the person's mental or emotional state.
Exactly. A really deep mind-body connection seems to be implicit in his observations here.
That's quite an insight, especially for the time he was writing. What kind of mental states did he actually describe?
Well, the specifics include things like deep melancholy, being taciturn, very reserved, not wanting to talk.
Quiet, withdrawn.
Yeah, sad, and just generally ill-humored. But what really stands out are the anxieties.
Okay.
Intense anxieties, an overwhelming fear of death. He mentions patients screaming with pain and experiencing profound anxiety.
So it sounds like immense suffering, physically and emotionally, all tied together, often revolving around the heart.
That's the picture he paints, yes. Very much intertwined.
Okay, so if we take a tour through this constricted body, following Boericke's descriptions, let's see how that iron band shows up elsewhere, starting maybe with the head.
Right, the head.
Yeah.
We see that theme of intense pressure and pulsation again.
How's it described?
Sensations like a weight on vertex, right on the very top of the head,
Okay.
and a feeling as if head were compressed in a vice.
Oof. Not just a headache then. Feels like actual physical force.
Exactly. You also get pulsation in ears, and specifically a right-sided pulsating pain.
Right-sided pulsating.
Mm-hmm. And he mentions congestive headaches that are periodical. There's that timing thing again.
Returning regularly.
Yes, and threatening apoplexy, which sounds like they felt severe enough to potentially lead to a stroke,
Wow.
with the blood vessels to the head distended. So the key thing isn't just the pain, but how it's consistently described. Pulsating, often on one side, and remarkably cyclical. It suggests this rhythmic, almost mechanical disturbance.
And anything else with the head? Vision. Face.
Yeah, he also notes dim sight and right-sided prosopalgia, that's severe facial pain, again with constricting pains, that characteristically return at same hour daily.
That daily timing is so specific, it really emphasizes a pattern, not just random pain.
It really does. It's a recurring feature in his description.
Okay, so from the head, where does this constricting feeling go next? Down towards the throat.
It seems to. While Boericke mentions things like profuse bleeding from nose and fluent coryza, just a standard runny nose, it's really the throat where that core sensation comes back strongly. He describes constriction of esophagus.
Feeling like your food pipe is narrowing.
Exactly. And dryness of tongue as if burnt, apparently so bad that one needs much liquid to get food down.
Difficulty swallowing then.
Definitely. And in severe cases like angina pectoris, that chest pain from poor blood flow to the heart,
Right.
he describes a suffocative constriction at throat with full throbbing carotids. Those are the big arteries in your neck.
So it's like the throat constriction is linked to wider issues, almost like a chokehold on the upper body.
That's certainly the impression you get from the description. It connects local sensations to systemic problems.
Okay, moving down again to the stomach and digestion. What shows up there?
Well, you find those familiar themes again. Constriction, pulsation, or heaviness in stomach.
The same kind of feelings.
Mm-hmm. And even vomiting of blood.
Bleeding again.
Yes. And for the bowels, the descriptions are quite vivid. Hard, black stools, sometimes diarrhea and in morning, hemorrhoids swollen and painful, and the sensation of great weight in anus.
That sounds like a pretty comprehensive picture of digestive distress.
It really is. And what's striking is how that theme of bleeding pops up again.
How so?
He notes hemorrhage from bowels in malarial fevers and with heart symptoms.
So connecting the gut bleeding to things like fever and heart problems.
Exactly. That consistent link between seemingly separate symptoms, digestion, fever, heart, is a really crucial thread in Boericke's observations.
Okay. What about the urinary system? Does the constriction show up there too?
It does. Constriction of neck of bladder, which he says causes retention of urine.
So trouble urinating because of that tightness.
Right. But also hemorrhage from bladder, more bleeding, clots of blood in urethra, and sometimes constant urination. So it's this odd mix of retention and frequent urges, often with bleeding involved.
And for the female reproductive system.
Similar patterns. Constriction in uterine region and ovaries.
Okay.
Dysmenorrhea, painful periods, described specifically with pulsating pain, and also vaginismus, which is an involuntary spasm of the vaginal muscles.
And the periods themselves, any specific details?
Yes, quite unique ones. Menses early, dark, pitch-like, and crucially, they cease on lying down with heart symptoms.
They stop when lying down, and it's linked to heart symptoms. That's very specific.
Extremely specific. It really suggests a deep interplay, in his view, between the reproductive system, posture, and the heart.
All right, now we arrive back at the chest and heart. This seems to be the absolute core of that iron band sensation, doesn't it?
It really does feel like the epicenter in his description. In the chest generally, you find oppressed breathing as from a weight on chest.
Like something heavy sitting there.
Yeah, and constriction in chest, as if bound, hindering respiration. He even mentions inflammation of diaphragm, that key breathing muscle.
So breathing becomes really difficult.
Very difficult. This can lead to hemoptysis, coughing up blood,
More bleeding.
with convulsive spasmodic cough, and diaphragmitis, the diaphragm inflammation itself causing great difficulty of breathing. The sheer intensity of the constriction here really impairs breathing, making it a struggle.
And then the heart itself. He comes back to that core phrase.
He does. The profound heart constriction, as from an iron band, is stated again almost like the defining feature.
And what specific conditions does he link this to?
He details things like endocarditis with mitral insufficiency, that's inflammation inside the heart with a leaky valve, together with violent and rapid action.
A heart working too hard and fast.
Right. And interestingly, he notes it acts best in the incipiency of cardiac incompetence, meaning the very beginning stages of heart failure.
So early on.
Yes, when the heart is just starting to struggle. Also for heart weakness of arteriosclerosis, hardened arteries, and even tobacco heart.
Suggesting a link to smoking-related heart issues?
That's what it implies. It shows this focus on the early or developing stages of heart weakness in his observations.
What about palpitations?
Oh, yes. Violent palpitation is a key symptom. And
Yeah.
again, very specific modalities, worse lying on left side, and noticeably at the approach of menses.
Position and the monthly cycle affect the heart symptoms significantly then.
According to Boericke, yes. And the picture of angina pectoris is particularly vivid.
How so?
He describes it with suffocation, cold sweat, and that ever-present iron band feeling. And importantly, pain shooting down left arm.
The classic heart attack radiating pain pattern.
Exactly, but combined with that suffocating, chilling feeling and the signature constriction, it sounds truly debilitating.
What else? Any other heart-related symptoms?
Yes, quite a few. Palpitation with vertigo, dizziness, dyspnea, shortness of breath, and even flatulence mentioned alongside.
Flatulence. That's an interesting connection.
It is. The source emphasizes very acute pains and stitches in heart and describes the pulse feeble, irregular, quick, without strength. So the heart is agitated, painful, but ultimately weak.
Okay. Any other signs?
Other cardiac signs listed include endocardial murmurs, those abnormal sounds, excessive impulse where the heart feels like it's beating too hard against the chest, increased precordial dullness, suggesting an enlarged heart on examination, enlarged ventricle, and low blood pressure.
So a failing enlarged heart despite the feeling of intensity.
That seems to be the picture. And one more. Toxic goiter with cardiac symptoms, linking it to thyroid problems that affect the heart. It's a really detailed constellation of symptoms centered on a struggling heart.
And moving out to the limbs, the extremities. What happens there?
You find edema of hands and feet, swelling from fluid buildup,
Okay.
with hands soft, feet enlarged. There's also numbness of left arm, linking potentially back to the heart pain, icy cold hands, and restless legs.
Coldness and restlessness. That seems common. How about sleep? Is that affected?
Profoundly, yes. Sleeplessness on account of pulsation in different parts of body.
Kept awake by that throbbing feeling.
Exactly. And frightful dreams.
Not restful sleep at all. Now, what about fever? You mentioned periodicity earlier. Does that show up strongly here?
Oh, absolutely. The fever patterns are described as quite striking, really showcasing that periodicity. Fever every day at same hour.
The same hour.
That's the description. Along with coldness in back and icy cold hands, it's described as intermittent paroxysms about midday, 11 a.m., incomplete in their stages, accompanied by hemorrhages.
So a recurring fever, peaking around 11 a.m., maybe not fully developing, but often involves bleeding and is associated with coldness.
Precisely. He notes coldness predominates, cold sweat with great anguish, and even a persistent subnormal temperature, perhaps, between attacks.
So a profound chill, even with a feverish state. It really makes you wonder about the body's temperature regulation in this picture.
It really does. That persistent underlying coldness is quite notable.
Okay, so we've got all these symptoms. What about things that make them worse or better, the modalities, as they're called?
Yes, and these are very specific in Boericke's text, which is often key in this system of medicine. Symptoms are noted as worse about noon, lying on left side, walking, going upstairs, 11 a.m. and 11 p.m.
Wow, those precise times, 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. and the left side again. Highly characteristic.
Very, but importantly, there's an amelioration. Symptoms are better in open air.
Ah, so getting outside helps. That's a crucial bit of information, isn't it? Maybe a contrast to that internal feeling of being caged or constricted.
It could be interpreted that way, yes. Fresh air providing some relief.
And does the source mention anything about how it relates to other remedies or about dosage?
Just briefly, it lists potential antidotes as Acon, Camp, China. Now, in this context, antidotes usually mean other substances thought to counteract or lessen the effects if needed. And it gives comparison remedies. Digital, Spiegel, Convalar, Calmia, nausea, manganol. These would be other substances known to have somewhat similar symptom pictures, helping practitioners differentiate.
To find the best match.
Exactly. And for dosage, Boericke suggests tincture, which is the liquid extract, preferably best made from flowers, used from the raw form up to the third attenuation, which refers to its dilution level.
Okay.
And he adds a specific note. Higher in nervous palpitations, suggesting a more diluted preparation might be used for those particular symptoms.
Wow. Okay, what a detailed journey through Boris' description of Cactus grandiflorus. It's genuinely striking how that unforgettable iron band sensation really is the signature, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's not just one symptom among many, it weaves through almost every system he describes, body and mind.
And the specificity of it all, the locations, the pulsations, and especially the periodicity, it's really remarkable the level of detail Boericke recorded.
It is. And this deep dive, I think, really shows the value you can get from looking closely at a single focused source like this materia medica.
Yeah, offers such detailed, very distinct insights. It gives you, the listener, a really well-informed perspective on this unique subject, seen through Boericke's particular lens.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? About how these incredibly detailed observations, even coming from a very different medical tradition, can spark new ways of looking at symptoms, patterns, and how interconnected the body truly is.
Definitely food for thought.
Absolutely. So here's something for you, our listeners, to maybe mull over. We know the night blooming cereus, the plant itself, is famous for its really fleeting, beautiful nocturnal bloom, right? It opens at night, gone by morning.
Very transient.
So, what deeper meaning, if any, might be drawn from that characteristic being associated with these reported effects, these intense, constricting, periodically recurring physical and mental states?
That's an interesting juxtaposition.
It is. What does this whole picture tell us about the power of observation, about pattern recognition, especially when viewed through different frameworks for understanding health and the body? Something to think about.